Hello, and welcome to the Haunted Library. Today I will be reading my newest short story called The Cost. So gather around, ghouls and gals. Book, come now, come. The Cost. Stretching her body as long as she could, Sunday cracked an eye open. Going limp, she looked around at the cracked walls of her bedroom. Groaning, she squeezed her eyes shut. Oh no, not again. I don't think I can make it another day. Staring up at the popcorn ceiling, she traced the pattern with her eyes. It was another Mother's Day. Another day when businesses boasted, treat your mom, or give you roses to make women feel special. No one ever stopped to ask, do you have a son? Are you okay today? Sunday thought, flipping the covers off. Every day is hard after you bury your son, but Mother's Day is just salt in the wound. Walking down the hall, she paused at Avery's door. It was still how he left it. She knew better than to think he was coming home. After all, she found him. Laying in the icy rain, he was already blue and cold. Patting the mahogany door frame, she pushed away from the room. If she gave in and went inside, she would spend hours in there. Days, maybe. Numb to the world around her, just a worthless, vacant shell of herself. Hesitating for a moment, she continued from the hallway, dragging her hand on the wall. The avocado walls of the bathroom had white patches sporadically decorating them. The manager swore it was going to be repainted soon. That was a running gag for the last 5 years. Tearing up as she traced her thumb over the rough patch job. I wish I would have let him paint scenes in these white patches when he asked, Sunday thought, tears building in her eyes. He could have painted the whole house if only I knew how little I would have left to remember him. Turning the lever to hot, she sat on the side of the tub, waiting for the steam to roll out. Sliding into the brown tub, she hugged her legs to her chest, the hot water spraying her back. She let the gates open. Sobs wrecked her chest. The gaping wound in her soul would never heal. No matter how often she let all the agony out, the hole inside just refilled with poison. Leaning away from the water, she palmed a plastic soap dish. Tapping a jagged nail on the lid, Sunday clicked it open. The silver blade glinted brilliantly against her cinnamon skin. It wasn't that she meant to kill herself. She just wanted to feel something. Anything. Running the blade across her thigh, red blossomed from her dark skin. The water quickly rushed it away down the drain. She took a deep breath and placed the blade tip back on her thigh, centimeters above the last. A rough knock on the front door made her jump. The blade slipped, cutting deeper than she intended. Scrunching her eyebrows together, Sunday narrowed her eyes at the pink meat exposed on her leg. Another curt knock sounded. I'm coming. Hold on, she called from the bathroom. She toweled off fast enough to set a world record and pressed a wad of toilet paper to her leg. Looking through the bronze peephole, she cursed under her breath. Norman always came at the worst times. It's like he knew. Pulling the door open a crack, she poked her head through. Hey, Norman, what brings you to my doorstep? Sunday tried her best to be nonchalant. Smiling, she tried harder to sell the front. Looking behind her at the grimy kitchen that was piled high with filthy plates, food crusted to the surfaces. The flies had fallen victim to pasta night, dying in the white sauce. He was unsure if the green was supposed to be there or if it had since grown. I just wanted to check on you. I thought you might need a friend today, he offered, keeping his voice soft. That was her favorite thing about Norman. He never overstepped or judged. He would sit next to an overflowing trash can and just listen. Wouldn't bring up the sorry state of her home. That was a rare gift in people. That's okay, Norman. I'm just going to relax today. One day at a time. Moments ticked by like hours. Sunday gathered all her courage to peek at Norman's face. His face was paler than normal, and his thin lips were pursed tightly. Following his brown gaze, Sunday noticed the blood running down her leg. I was shaving. I thought I would spend this Sunday in church. That is all. Can I come in? He asked, eyes meeting hers for the first time today. Pulling the worn brown door open, she stepped aside. Making a beeline to the hall closet, he pulled out a red first aid kit, gesturing for Sunday to have a seat at the kitchen table. Norman knelt in front of her, pushing her robe aside. His eyes grew wide at the cuts on her legs in various stages of healing. The pearly scars traced up her thighs, knees to hips. Folding up a square of gauze, he held it to her leg. Crimson seeping through the gauze, Norman sighed, switching it for a new one. You don't have to do this. You're getting blood on your fingers, she said, looking at the floor. How long have you been doing this, Sonny? He asked, keeping pressure on her leg. Deflating in her chair, Sunday let out a long sigh. About 3 years. A few months after we laid Avery down, I threw a cup. It shattered on the wall. When I was cleaning it up, I cut my hand and the pain was electric, like the shock woke me up. But the ice always finds a way back in. A few days and I'm numb again. I want to see my boy more than anything. But that's a sin God would not forgive. So I'll just wait till he calls me home. Every night I pray I won't wake up, and every morning God challenges my faith and wakes me up another day. Did the cops ever find out who did it? He asked, putting a large Band-Aid on her thigh. I reckon they didn't even look. They said it was just an overdose. Drugs have been bad in these parts for a decade or more now, but I've never seen an overdose cause 2 broken arms and a broken neck. But I'm just a waitress. What if I told you I knew somebody that could help? He asked, holding her hands in his. Like you know who hurt my boy? She asked, tone sharp. God, no, nothing like that. I would have told you, Sonny, honest. I've heard of a guy that can find anyone and make them pay. How could I point someone in the direction of his killer when I have no idea? Well, I heard from Una that a guy helped Gary, and he didn't need a name or a face. He just knows things. I'm not sure how. They call him Cinna. Norman's mouth snapped shut at the howling laughter. You are pulling my leg on Mother's Day, of all days. Norman, you ought to be ashamed. Sunday snapped, pulling her hands back, shooting to her feet. She knocked Norman off balance, and he landed in the linoleum floor with a thud. I'm not pulling your leg, Sonny, I swear. I'll take you down there, and if he can't help, we'll keep looking, but I swear on my wife's grave, I'm being honest. Oh, fine. Let me get dressed. I hope for both our sakes he can help us. Spinning on her heels, she left Norman sitting in the floor. Pulling on her holey jeans and sweater, she sighed again, making a mental note to get a new sweater. It was still a rather chilly day in Washington in May. Pulling on her black sneakers, she laced them tight. They were a size too big, but they were too good to pass up. Finger combing her red hair into a ponytail, she glanced at the mirror one last time. This would have to do. She doubted they would find anyone. He sounded more like a boogeyman from a bad comic strip. Norman was waiting in the rickety wicker chair when she came into the kitchen. At least the boy had common sense to get out of the floor, she mused. Grabbing her purse from the counter, she frowned. I guess I'm ready to meet this guy. Pushing up from the chair, he fished the keys from his pockets. It's a short drive over to 25th Street. Norman waited as Sunday locked up the apartment. The elevator had long been broken, and the trip down 3 flights of stairs was silent. Norman's green F-100 sat alone in the parking lot. Rust had worked through the beds in several spots, but the old truck ran like new. The uncomfortable silence stretched on between them, as if the fluttering of butterflies was replaced with bee stings. So, how do you know where to find this man? Sunday asked, fiddling with the frayed strings on her pants. I was going to see him myself, about Gina. Clearing his throat, he kept his eyes glued to the road. She was closing the diner and armed gunmen came in. It was Christmas Day, so it was slow, you know. Gina lost her life over $35. The cameras that were hung in the dining room, they were just for show. They didn't even have them hooked up. I never found out who took my wife away from me. Oh, Norman, I am so sorry. I never knew. It seems like you need him more than me. Well, that's not true. Maybe we can go in together. I saw your legs, Sunday. It's only a matter of time before you cut too deep or get an infection. Nodding silently, they sat in their mutual discomfort. Pulling the old truck up to a storm drain, he killed the engine. Well, this is it. The doors creaked open. Stepping down, Sunday straightened her purse on her shoulder. The rusty storm drain had a thick chain looped around the cover. Turning the padlock over in her hand, Sunday growled, I guess we wasted our time after all, she said, frustration rolling off her shoulders. Taking the lock from her hands, Norman gave it a hard yank. The padlock came undone. They use magnets to keep these old things shut. That way you don't have to worry about keys, but it keeps the homeless out, Norman said, pulling the chain free. Pushing open the large round grate, the squeal echoed down the pipe. Pulling it shut behind her, Norman turned on the flashlight on his phone. The water swished over his boots. The smell of garbage wafted up their noses. Sunday shook her head. These Nikes are ruined now. He should have told me where we were going, she thought, annoyed at her predicament. This is for Avery, she reminded herself, pushing on. The light from the tunnel entrance grew smaller and smaller as it disappeared completely. Water dripped from the pipes that ran overhead. Sunday wasn't sure if it smelled as bad as the water they were wading in, or if it was just that overpowering. The shine of eyes lit up in the dark. The rat scurried away before the duo ventured too closely. If you wanted to steal my kidneys, we could have just stayed at my house, she grumbled half-jokingly. They must have been in the sewers for hours, or at least it seemed that way. I wouldn't know what to do with your kidneys anyhow, Norman grunted back. His flashlight reflected off of a mural on the stone wall. The large green smoky painting depicted a man in the vapor with glowing eyes. The image sent a chill down her spine. He's just past this door, Norman whispered, flashlight stuck on the mural. Swallowing hard, she patted him on the shoulder. Resting her hand on the doorknob, she inhaled. Holding her breath, she pushed the door aside. Thick fumes rolled out of the frame, and she slipped inside with one last glance at Norman. The large metal door slammed shut with a clang. The rodents scurried away in all directions. To her surprise, the dark room smelled sweet, like flowers or ripe fruits. The thick cobwebs hung on the wall, and drops of drizzle clung into the silver nets. Scooping her hands out in front of her as she walked, Sunday tore a clear path. The rusted door at the back of the corridor hung on by one stubborn hinge. With a fierce tug, the door scraped across the damp cement floor. The smell was stronger beyond this door. A single green light hung from the ceiling, swinging lazily side to side in the darkness. A dark figure sat slumped over in a great chair, like a lazy king kicked back on a throne. Fear etching an icy path to her stomach, she tried to slow her breathing. She really didn't believe she would find anyone here. Covering her stomach with her hand, she fisted her t-shirt. I am the man you seek. They call me Cinna, he said, voice cracking. The sinister whisper of it grated her ears. How did you know I was looking for you? She questioned, taking a step back. The figure was off the throne and stooped over her shoulder in one breath. Shuddering, she backed into the wall. Yes, he said, sniffing her. Covering his mouth with a rag, the sweet smell was pungent, almost nauseating. He inhaled deeply and growled out, Ask me what you seek, little lamb. A shepherd can't help a silent flock. I was told you could help me find the one that hurt my son. He was murdered last year. Cocking his head to the side as if listening to something or someone, he cackled again. Not an overdose. Tell me, what do you know? A searing pain shot across the nape of her neck, and he pushed the dirty rag onto her face. The thick smoke rolled in heavier. Feeling weightless, she fell into the cloud. The heavy downpour was deafening. Holding her hand out, Sunday rotated her palms, and the rain passed through her hand. Looking down the alleyway, she shrieked. Laying in a heap at the end of the stairs was Avery. His large frame looked impossibly fragile. He was curled into himself. Strawberry rivers ran away from his body into the drainage ditch. A howl of gut-wrenching pain pulled her attention from the boy. Sunday saw herself rushing down the steps. Slipping in the rain, she tumbled down the last 10, crawling on hands and knees to Avery's side. Tugging her sweater off her shoulder, she covered him up, screaming for help. Scrunching her brows in confusion, she looked down at her feet. Moving her body, she raised her gaze to see herself in the worst moment of her life. A dark apparition floated around the two of them. The smell of flowers floated on the breeze. Sunday watched Cinna observe the scene. Am I dead? She wondered. How can I be out of my body? Feeling a hot buzz throughout her body, Sunday patted her legs to put out the invisible flames. The fog lifting, she blinked in a slow progression. Looking around the room, it all came back to her. The green light flickered. Cinna was posted on his throne once again. Pushing off the damp ground, she dusted off her pants. "I can help you," he croaked. "I have seen the man who killed your son." "You saw him? Where?" she asked. Hope sprang to life in her chest. "For a small fee, I can make this right. Stole from the wrong kingpin, he did." "What's your small fee? I don't have much money. I work at the diner." Yes, Riot Burger. You hate it there," he said, cackling, inhaling the rag again. "Don't worry, Sunday Bloom. You have 206 of what I seek. You won't miss one little one." Inhaling the rag again, he slumped over, stretching out his legs. "This may be my only shot. For all I know, he wants the roaches in my apartment. For Avery, I'll take that chance," she thought. "Anything is worth what I have taken from me. I'll never see a marriage or a graduation or grandbabies." Wiping a tear from her eye, she stepped forward. "You have a deal. You can have one. Just please make sure his murderer suffers," she said, venom in her tone. "A deal is a deal, little lamb," he said giddily, bouncing in his seat. Bounding across the room, he covered her mouth with the rag. The familiar fog rolled in her brain, and everything went black. A long mustard-colored nail poked out of his robe. Running the point of his stiletto-shaped nail across her jaw, crimson blossomed over her tan skin. Pushing in deeper, the pink meat of her jaw poked through the gash. Blood squirted onto her blouse, saturating her chest. Mirroring the cut on the other side, her jaw skin hung down, filleted open on her neck. Admiring his work, Cinna curled his fingers around her bottom jaw. Giving it a yank, the bone shattered, sending shards bouncing all over the cement floor. Removing her mandible, he held it up in the green light, twisting it to and fro to admire his work. Dropping her head onto the cement, she groaned. Gurgling on her blood, Sunday coughed, sending a fountain of blood into the air and splattering the ground around her. Rolling over, she let out a cry. Hands reaching up the pain in her face, her eyes grew wide. Patting, her tongue slapped against her fingers. The cold skin flap from her jaw stuck to her neck, the blood on her shirt growing cool and sticky. Whimpering, she looked frantically around the room. Cinna was perched on his throne, blood coating his sleeves of his robe. Inhaling from the rag, he laughed. The white of the jawbone glinted in the green light. Wearing it like a depraved crown, he laughed to himself. Sitting up suddenly, his head cocked to the side, and he paused. Listening to something, he sat back, laughing. He toyed with his lip. "The collection is almost complete, master. Just four more lambs to the slaughter," Cinna whispered into the dark room. Slipping in her own blood, Sunday tried to pull herself from the room. Weakly, her fingers toyed at the rusted door, trying to push it open to drag herself through. Collapsing onto the cold, damp floor, breathing in rapidly to remain conscious, the sweet smell of the room was replaced by mold and rot. The room fell into darkness once more. Tonight, on VBC News, we hang our head in sorrow as the news of Governor Holcombe's passing have been reported. A police call was received at 11:50 of a break-in at his Renton home. The assailant brutalized the governor. Authorities believe the fall down the stairs broke his neck, ending his life. If you have any information on this home invasion, please call the tip line. So, I guess the thing that you dream about the most could actually end up becoming your nightmare. Until next time, happy hauntings.